What up, Bulls? Blade Master here, back with some more Total War Rome 2 online action. I'm fighting up against Bogdan in this matchup, and this is going to be a really fun matchup. I've taken Armenia and he has taken Rome. We're going to be fighting up in Nemedocena, which means that this is going to heavily favor the Armenians in terms of the map selection, because the shock cavalry army that almost any Armenian build would bring is going to be maximized by the fact that there's no hills or no trees to impede their potential shock charge. This is also going to be a very interesting match because the two builds that we brought almost completely cancel each other out. With Armenia, I've brought a purely skirmish build. I've taken 3 horse skirmishers up in front. I've also brought a total of 4 eastern archers, 2 on either flank, with 3 eastern slingers up in the center. I brought an infantry line of 3 axemen with 2 eastern spearmen to support. I've also brought a total of 4 eastern cataphracts and 1 royal cataphract general. So a very heavy skirmish build. And let's go ahead and see what Bogdan has taken in response to Armenia. Remember, he had the counterpick opportunity, so he decided to take Rome. So here, let's see what he's brought with Rome. He's taken 3 Saki Extraordinary, and he's also brought a couple of legionaries. Behind them, he's brought a second line of 3 auxiliary Syrian archers, a third line of 3 auxiliary infantry, a fourth line of 3 auxiliary Balearic slingers, a legatus general all the way up in the center, and 4 triarii protecting his rear. So one thing that immediately sticks out from his deployment, let's talk about his deployment first before going into the details of his army. His deployment is extremely narrow, so you can see that it's almost a complete box. And what this means is, one, his army or his Saki Extraordinary, all of his infantry, his archers, everyone are going to be in very deep formations. So I can expect the front line of Saki Extraordinary and legionaries to have like 6 to 7 rank deep formations. So what this would entail is that, one, my shock charges from my cataphracts would not be as deadly because it wouldn't topple over as many men at once. So while charging into a rank that's 5 deep, probably the first 2 ranks will just fall down and die immediately from the charge. But because it's a deep formation, they'll be able to hold out for a longer time. What this also means is that I won't be able to just as easily pull through or pull out away from those engagements. The third thing that it does is that it means he can use the limited maneuverability of his army. You can see he hasn't brought any cavalry here. So he can use the limited maneuverability of his army he can basically offset that, because all of his units are very, very close to each other. So he can bring timely spear support and sword support wherever he needs it. And that way his Syrian archers and his Balearic slingers are kind of safeguarded as well. But the fourth thing that bringing a very close, very deep ranked formation like this does is that his Syrian archers and his Balearic slingers will form a much easier target for my skirmishers, because they are just so deep and clustered that it presents a much easier target for them rather than a thin line right across the map. But all in all, I think bringing a square army like this, very like boxy army like this, is a very good decision. Let's take a look at his army build, go over it in a bit more detail. His triarii are excellent units at 790 talents. They have amazing anti-cav capabilities, and they can box up into square. They don't even have fire build, so you don't need to worry about them not bracing. So you can deploy them into square and they'll just last for days and days. Auxiliary infantry are kind of not really all that good, I would say, especially since he was bringing them as his medium, in the middle of his army. He should have instead brought gladiator spearmen, I believe, because when they are in the middle of his army, he doesn't need to worry about them getting charged at frontally, because his Saki Extraordinary and his legionaries would take care of that. They'd get front charged, if anything. His rear is protected by these incredibly tanky triarii, whom I wouldn't charge. So in the middle, he has the opportunity to instead bring some really offensive anti-cav units. So some gladiator spearmen with killing spree, I believe is what it's called, would just completely annihilate cataphracts very easily. But these are decent units too, auxiliary infantry. If anything, they can be good arrow fodder, whereas gladiator spearmen would get completely shattered by my archers and my slingers. He's brought 3 Syrian archers and 3 Balearic slingers, which is very heavy on the skirmish. But he just doesn't have the maneuverability, the cav support to ensure that all of these units are safe, which is why he's deployed them in his army in such a boxish formation. Still, like I said, bringing them in a box formation has its own disadvantage. My slingers would probably be able to do a very good job against these Syrian archers, but the fact that they are very heavily armored is going to be a concern. His Balearic slingers cannot be influenced to attack my skirmish line at all if I want to win this game, because if all 6 of his extremely powerful skirmishers attack the 6 of mine, which are, well, was it 7? Yeah, 7 skirmish units of mine. He will absolutely wreck them. So these Beleri Slingers need to be handled in such a way that they cannot influence the skirmish engagement. So as for the units that will really make a difference in this game, I believe my horse skirmishers can do really well. These units are basically a mobile sniping force now. Their 41 missile damage is just brilliant. What it can do is against heavily armored armies like Rome, they can actually make a huge difference, because what can be seen in high-level tournament play at the very least is that horse archers are usually not used as much. When they are used, it's very easy to screen them off, especially when you're fighting up against a barbarian faction. It's just so easy. All you need to use is one Levy Freeman, set them on an attack order, and they'll start flinging javelins once the horse archers get close enough, which they inevitably will. And in the end, the horse archers just have a reduced effect on the match, especially when it comes down to the meta being barbarian rushes and both of them running into each other. They need some time to become really effective, whereas horse skirmishers, on the other hand, all you need is time for 2 or 3 volleys and they'll just slaughter any cavalry. They'll even do a ton of damage to even heavily armored infantry like noble swords, like I showed in the previous video. Just completely slaughtered them down to like 90 men with like 4 or 5 volleys remaining. And you know, that's why I decided to bring these units. They cost 390 talents, which means that they aren't they're the cheapest skirmish unit for Armenia, I believe, but they are more expensive than the mercenary Scythians. The Eastern Slingers for my army can actually do pretty well if I focus fire on one of his Syrian archers and if he doesn't focus fire on one of my slingers. In general, the extra health and the armor that auxiliary Syrian archers have mean that they are just so incredibly tanky against, you know, cav charges, against slingers, that they actually are a very, very good unit. His Saki Extraordinari are a very interesting choice, and I think that's a smart decision by him, because these are probably one of the tankiest units that Rome can field. Remember, none of their units have shield wall, so that means that they can't brace as effectively. But Saki Extraordinari, with their extremely high health and their incredibly high armor, are probably one of the tankiest units for their price. So against cataphract charges, they would actually do pretty decently. I mean, considering everything that they're, you know, not a spear unit, they'd actually do pretty well. His legionaries, though, I'm sure if he had the option, he'd probably bring 5 of the Saki Extraordinari. His legionaries probably wouldn't do as well as compared to his Saki Extraordinari when being faced by a cataphract charge, but they will be offensive enough to kill off my axemen for sure. His auxiliary infantry, like I mentioned, are not going to be difference makers. What I do think will be difference makers are his triarii, because they can be the perfect counter to my Eastern cataphracts. So the way I should try and proceed in this game would be to keep cutting back with my mainline, because his mainline absolutely destroys mine. And I need to bait his archers into start showering their ammo onto my horse skirmishers and then retreat, do some guerrilla tactics with these units. And then try and maybe either snipe his legatives with my horse skirmishers, or just get a huge surround on with my cataphracts, and you know, use the extended maneuverability that I have with my cataphracts to reposition a lot of my army and try and get some good angles on his otherwise boxy formation. So without further ado, whoa, I'm just moving around way too much with this. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the battle. And I'm going to fast forward the first bits of this. I'm going to move up in front. I'm going to take my time with my horse skirmishers. He, meanwhile, has to proceed to my main line. I've deployed them pretty far away. And I'm just going to start taking shots off. He's going to get a couple of volleys on with his Syrian archers, I believe. So I'm just going to run away with 2 of my horse skirmishers. 60 and 60, they haven't taken any casualties yet. I'm going to move up in front so that they can these Syrian archers have a target to shoot at. They do, I believe, kill maybe 1 or 2 of my skirmishers at this point. Yeah, they've killed 1, but I've got another behind his line immediately, because of course he doesn't have any cavalry to screen them off. He doesn't have any vigiles also, no low tier spears to screen these units off. So I'm just going to keep moving up. Let's put this in double speed. Just baiting his Syrian archers to shoot, and he is taking the bait gladly. His Beleri slingers also, he's turned them around so that they're just on that horse skirmisher duty. He got a couple of shots on which hit them, but they haven't taken any losses yet. I'm again going to move up in front, get 1 volley off, let his Syrian archers start firing into my men. And I don't micro well, and I lose around 3 horse skirmishers, but still that's good, because that's just so many volleys. They've already you know, lost like 3 to 4 volleys, just all gone to waste. And that's only because I've been using this guerrilla tactic. It really frustrates your opponent and it's pretty effective too, but you have to take care of your micro, which I didn't do here. 46 units left because he got a pretty decent volley off with his Syrian archers. Again, they're going to start firing. Again, I'm going to kite back. This time those arrows are not going to hit my units. I'm still thinking what to do at this point with my main line because his units just completely outmatch mine, and I need to use my shock cap to their best advantage. However, he's got such good spears that it's going to be pretty hard for me to do that. So I'm just going to keep, for now I'm content with just kiting around, letting him loose as many volleys. I believe he's stopped firing at this point. He decides to turn off fire at will, and he's going to keep advancing with his army, making sure that his army is still in the blockish formation that it needs to be in order to succeed and in order to make his units as tanky as possible to my very powerful cataphracts. Again, going to fast forward. And again, he's going to keep shooting at some with his Balearic Slingers. His Balearic Slingers would actually be a much bigger threat now because they have almost unlimited ammo, and they still can be more than enough to destroy my archers and my slingers. My eastern archers are very good anti-infantry forces, but against other skirmishers, their lack of armor, morale, and health are going to be devastating for them. So just kiting back, I'm not moving around with my main line yet. I'm just going to induce him to keep trying to fire more and more ammunition on me. That's a very smart move here. He just turned around with his Balearic Slingers and he actually caught some of my horse skirmishers, killing off 10 more of them. But these units are so highly fatigue resistant that you can keep doing this, keep running around with them for 10 minutes without risk of them being too slow to run away from enemy arrows. So he has positioned his Balearic Slingers so that he's got almost all of his angles covered by some sort of skirmisher, which is great. I mean, the fact that he's brought so many of those skirmishers means that he has enough flexibility for this to happen. But I believe he's turned off fire at will with some of his skirmishers, so that's going to give me some time to get a couple of shots on his Triarii. He's going to start firing again with his Syrian archers, and I believe he catches some of my units. He catches one. But that's 3 Syrian archers wasting their ammo on one unit without getting only one kill. What he could possibly do is use Testudo when my skirmish line gets into contact with his. But I'm not going to fire into the front of his legionaries and his Saki Extraordinary. I mean, take a look at their armor. They have just brilliant armor. 95 armor for Saki Extraordinary, 80 armor, which is more than enough for legionaries, and they also have the option for Testudo, so I'm just not going to attack them. I'd instead just focus on killing off his skirmishers one by one, or at least rendering them ineffective with my guerrilla tactics with these skirmisher cav. And then just moving around with my cataphracts, moving around with my army to try and get at him from all angles. So that's what I'm going to start doing now. I'm moving around with my cataphracts into spreading them, pretty thin, and he's got, I think he's close enough. Yeah, his army is close enough to my skirmish line, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to move around with my cataphracts, moving to the sides, and now my slingers are starting to take their shots off, and I'm going to focus fire on one of his Syrian archers. What I'm also doing is I'm going to move immediately with my eastern archers. Both my eastern archers are going to be moved on to the sides, and instead he's going to be faced with one skirmish line of only 3 slingers, all of whom are focusing fire on one of his Syrian archers. So the extra armor that these guys have, 40 armor, 55 health, is going to be, it's going to be good enough for them to tank out some of this engagement, but with focus fire they'll definitely start dropping very quickly. I'm also moving up in front with my eastern spearmen. So right now I have eastern archers really far away from my main line, and this is a risk that you can only take when your opponent doesn't bring any cavalry support. So his auxiliary Syrian archers are starting to die very quickly now. Meanwhile, my slingers are also starting to die. 66, 75, and 89 men remaining on slingers, and slingers are supposed to be able to beat archers in one-on-one engagements, but it's just that the quality of his archers is just so good, so much better than mine, that it's just not going to matter. So these slingers are starting to lose a lot of men. I'm not microing extremely well with my horse skirmishers. You can see a lot of them are dying to those Balearic Slingers. Just again, the fact that he brought so many skirmishers and he has such timely spear support means that it's going to be pretty hard for me to try and get a proper surround on him without taking a lot of casualties in the process. My eastern slingers are starting to die pretty quickly now, but he has lost one of his auxiliary Syrian archers, and they're going to, I think he was focusing fire on 2 of my slingers, I believe, because there's one which is basically full strength still. Now my archers are getting close enough. They took a couple of shots, couple of volleys on his on the sides of his legionaries. My other archers over here are also taking some shots on his Saki Extraordinary, just using the extra maneuverability that I have to get some shots off and then run away before his Beleri Slingers come into support. My horse skirmishers are coming back from routing there. His auxiliary Syrian archers have also come back from routing, and he's systematically destroying my Eastern Slingers. But he doesn't have any ammo at this point. I believe he's got maybe 2 or 3 volleys left, because I made sure to rob him a lot of his ammo. I'm also going to move up really aggressively with my Eastern Spearman, and he's going to keep fighting on the last Eastern Slinger that I have. So far though, my Eastern archers have taken 11, 6, 0 and 3 and 0 kills respectively, but they've definitely dropped a lot of HP on some of his Saki Extraordinary. Slingers over here just getting demolished by the last remaining archers that he has. Again, the fact that his archers are in a pretty blockish formation means that they're going to take more casualties than needed. His Syrians here are coming back, have come back from routing, are affecting that engagement as well. And here his Syrian archers who are out of ammo are going to engage my Eastern Spearmen, which is perfect for me because that means I can tie down the unit and get a lot of kills in the process as well. He managed to get a couple of kills on my Eastern archers with some sneaky Beleri Slinger fire. And I'm also going to support this Syrian archer and just completely kill it off with another Eastern Spearman. So at the end of the day, these Syrian archers got 74 kills, but all on pretty low value targets such as my Eastern Slingers. Of course, they are good units, but he would have been better suited off to just try and attack my general or something instead, or move around with his Beleri Slingers to get a Slinger on Slinger engagement instead. Now I'm going to start firing on his Triarii. No, I'm going to start firing on his Beleri Slingers, try and whittle them down. His Syrian archers are basically tired and out of ammo because he's used precision shot. And my archers are going to take a ton of casualties in the process here because he was able to get some uninterrupted shots, and the fact that they have no armor, very low health, means that they're going to die very quickly. But yeah, so far his Syrian archers are starting to rout now, and he's only got 1 full strength Syrian archer left, which is basically useless because they have no ammo. They are still firing actually, so they have probably 1 or 2 volleys left. Let's keep fast forwarding. He's getting some shots onto my Eastern Cataphracts with his Beleri Slingers, which is terrible for me actually. 4 casualties suffered on one of my Eastern Cataphracts, another 4 on the second one. But for the other 2, they are at full strength. My general is hale and healthy, full strength. Nothing has been done to him so far. My Axemen are also at full strength. Eastern Slingers are just basically dead though. They still have 55 men, but they're going to die while trying to kill off this Syrian archer. I'm going to try and make use of this little gap that he provided by charging in with my Eastern Spearmen to try and catch some of his Beleri Slingers, but he manages to get some timely auxiliary infantry support, so that threat is nullified. But meanwhile, I'm just going to continue trying to whittle him down with Eastern archers. Just keep getting as many shots as possible on his onto the backs of his otherwise highly armored units, and once their HP has been whittled down so much by flank shots from Eastern archers, then they will be a lot less effective for sure, especially against charges. They'll get destroyed. You can see that because of his blockish formation, he has a 6 rank deep infantry, which is really strong. Now I'm going to come in for a frontal charge with my Royal Cataphracts. This is a very standard tactic. Just crash into as many of his units as possible and then follow it up immediately with an Axeman charge, and make sure that those Romans don't get a charge off. I'm also going to time it with some Eastern Cataphracts as well. So I got a coordinated charge on his entire front line and then pulled away with my Eastern Cataphracts. 5 kills on them, 50 kills on my Royal Cataphracts, and 11 kills with my Eastern Cataphracts here, just attacking his auxiliary infantry. My Axemen, with the help of my Royal Cataphracts and my archers, just completely annihilated that Saki Extraordinary. It looks like that extraordinary unit is done. There we go, with only 19 units left, just like a couple of seconds after the charge. Just shows how effective these Eastern archers can be. He's coming into support with one of his auxiliary infantry, and his Roman units are sort of bunched up now. My Axemen will obviously fall to his much more superior infantry, but he is out of skirmish support at this point, and my Cataphracts can come in for as many charges as they want. But his Triarii are going to be a problem, so I can't get any rear charges on his units at this point. His auxiliary infantry, and I'm just going to focus fire and kill off as many of his spear units as possible. And with my Royal Cataphract, I've popped second wind because I have a Strategist General after I used Trample initially. And then I'm going to try and get into the rear of his Saki Extraordinary over here. His Auxiliary Infantry are starting to waver now. His Triarii is still at full strength, but his Slingers just have so many targets to try and aim at. Either they try and kill off my Eastern Cataphracts, in which case they'll die from my Archers, or they'll aim at my Archers and then get slaughtered by the Cataphracts. Meanwhile, my Royal Cataphract got into the rear of his Saki Extraordinary. Just goes to show how tanky these units are. From a rear charge from one of the strongest units in the game, they only suffered like 20 casualties, even when they were attacked in the rear. Their low morale actually is a big hindrance for them though, so even if you don't get many kills, that morale penalty can be a bit too much. I'm getting some flank shots onto his Legatus here, which is going to be very devastating for him unless he pulls away with them. They've already suffered 7 casualties. And because his Triarii was spread so thin, I just crashed into them and then pulled through and attacked some of his Balearic Slingers. Here I'm going to get into the rear of his Legionaries while my Axemen were holding them off. 82 kills, 83 kills on Roman Infantry with my Axemen here. 82 kills here. My other Axeman has routed though. And my Royal Cataphract is going to be pretty vulnerable to these units unless I move them out. My Eastern Cataphracts here with 39 kills. I'm getting into his into the center of his formation, which is pretty devastating for him. I'm going to come in to charge these already depleted Saki Extraordinary for a second charge with my Royal Cataphract Gen. My Eastern Archers though have gotten into his Balearic Slingers and his Legatus, and they are starting to die very quickly now. His Balearic Slingers have done well so far, but they are going to die again to charges from Eastern Cataphracts. His infantry have been attacked in the rear by my Eastern Catas over here. His Triarii just haven't been able to play as much of a role as they would have. They've got a lot of kills on a couple of Cataphracts, these two units, after charging into them, because I just had to hold them down. I had to sacrifice a little bit of one of my men at least for the others to, do well. My Eastern Archers though, meanwhile, have just been slaughtering these Roman infantry. 65 kills, 68, 75, just getting flank and rear shots onto these incredibly high armored and high value Triarii units, and just completely whittling them down. Even if they don't get many kills, they're going to drop them of their HP, and that's going to be good enough for an extremely powerful Cataphract to just slaughter them. 128, 131, 33, 4 with my kills with my Eastern Cataphract, double experience chevron. Axeman killing off the rest of these depleted Saki Extraordinary. His auxiliary infantry are just not going to be enough. His legionaries are going to do well against these Axemen, but I've killed off his Legatus at this point. He's only got Triarii left, and I have so many archers that it's just not going to make much of a difference. I do have these Eastern Slingers as well, just in case I need the extra ammo, but it doesn't look like I'd need it because my Royal Cataphract, I'm going to pop Trample for a second time on them and then get into the rear. Oh, I was trying to get into the rear of these legionaries. It doesn't look like I got a pretty decent charge. I think they were just stopped by some other unit. But I'm going to get flank shots on his Triarii with my Eastern Archers and just completely whittle them down. At this point, it doesn't look like it's going to go in Bogdan's favor at all. My Eastern Cataphracts have just done brilliantly because I was able to surround him very earlier on in the start, and getting rear charges and flank charges from Cataphracts is just going to spell doom to any army, no matter what kind of army it is. Even if it's hoplites, they just cannot survive to such heavy mass crashing into their sides and rears. And these Eastern Archers themselves have done really well again because he didn't have any maneuverability in his army, which allowed me to get proper angles onto them. Crashing into the sides of his Triarii with my Eastern Catas, and they're going to start getting a lot of kills because I have Trample on them, so wow, they're going to do brilliantly against those otherwise really very cost-effective units. And of course, Triarii will obviously die to Axemen because they are at similar strength in terms of units, and one is Spear, so it can't hold off to an Axeman. Legionaries over here starting to die. They actually have done pretty well, but they're going to get caught by Eastern Cataphracts. This one unit hasn't really done too much, but it's also going to just be it's going to get a single experience chevron as well. He's popped square formation a little too late onto his Triarii, but now just take a look at the units that I have. Just so many units. My Cataphract General is still at full strength basically, and of course I have so much skirmisher support that it's not going to matter. GG to Bogdan, very well played. Very nice army, nice potential Armenian counter by Rome. At the end of the day, it's a costly victory to me, but the fact that he didn't have any cavalry kind of spelled his doom here, even though he had such powerful skirmishers. Maybe if he brought a couple of cavalry, even a couple of cavalry would have been more than enough to just try and get at my archers and just, catch some of them. Because you can see the devastation that they did. 102 kills, 86 kills, 72 and 85. Those are kills that you would never get against such heavily armored units like Saki Extraordinary and Legionaries. unless you can get flank shots and rear shots with these Eastern archers, which is what I did. You could see the devastation that it did when I targeted his leftmost Sake Extraordinary with 2 of my Eastern archers, and then followed that up with with an Axeman charge, and then that just completely destroyed that unit within a matter of seconds. Even though they still had like 80 units left, all of their HP was just so down to such low numbers that my Axemen could completely destroy them. Slingers not doing too much, but they provided a target for him to use his ammo on. These Syrian archers could have instead been killing off my cataphracts if I didn't bring these units. But the fact that I brought them meant that they did a pretty half-decent job against some very elite tier archers, and by focusing fire on some of his archers, they actually managed to kill them off pretty easily, or kill one of them off pretty easily. My Eastern Spearmen didn't really do too much. I was only going to bring them in case he brought Numidian Javelin men of his own, or if he had brought any cavalry units, then these Eastern Spearmen could just rob them of their charge. My cataphracts did really well. The only reason they did well was because I managed to surround them from the start. One of my Eastern cataphracts got a ton of casualties without contributing anything to the battle. Horse skirmishers could have played a much more important role in this match, but unfortunately didn't, again because of his smart formation and good use of his skirmishers. Well, good use of his Balearic slingers. His Syrian archers, he needed to have turned off fired well almost immediately when he saw what I was doing. Anyways, guys, again, before I forget, his auxiliary infantry really didn't come into the game at all. And combined with that frontal charge from my royal cataphracts that you guys saw earlier on, just when I started attacking his army, if he had brought gladiator spearmen, he could have just set attack orders with his gladiator spearmen. They could have maybe caught some of my cataphracts and then killed them off very easily. That could have been a potential thing, but again, I had flank shots on with my Eastern archers, so they could have just smashed through those gladiator spearmen if that was the case. His Triarii didn't do too much, could have done a lot better against this cataphract army, but unfortunately for Bogdan, they were kind of hamstrung because they had to protect the Balearic slingers and they had to protect his rear, which meant that I could just get uninterrupted charges with my cataphracts onto his sides and onto his front, which meant that they couldn't be very useful. Anyways, guys, that's the end of this battle. Hope you enjoyed it and stay tuned for more. Peace.